Humans reveal their capacity for suffering through which we either inflict or oppose. Capitalism is the root cause of blocking our ability to care, leaving our world with the care of those who possess abundant capitalism or damage to our ethical lives. Mortgage 98. The human species reveals its capacity for suffering, either capable of inflicting or opposing. Capitalism is not the only thing that blocks our ability to care. Exploitation and cruelty were long around before the economic system. Capitalism and temptation might be used to abuse others that will probably survive in any future that might supersede capitalism, and putting the world at the disposal of those whose capitalism more to damage the ethical lives than anything else. Much of the problem lies in the rationalist, not ethical theories such as util and Kantian framework perpetuates a sense of supremacy. Plumwood writes. Much of the problem lies in rational direct conception of the self and what is essential and valuable in the human makeup. It's a name of such a reason the feminine, emotional, merely bodily, or merely animal nature of the world itself, and most often deny their virtue and accord to an inferior, merely instrumental position. The Kantian rationalist framework, and what that is hardly the area in which to search for the solution. It uses perpetuates the supremacy of reason, adopts into contrast areas in the service of constructing a supposedly biocentric ethic. So, Plumwood shows that the ethical approach currently taken is insufficient because it works with the Kantian ethic framework in which universal reason as opposed to emotion promotes morality. Reason ignores our ability and desires and inclinations or perpetuates this logic of domination. Our current conception of rights are masculine and purport a sense of prestige of the public sphere. Ethics of rights need to be centered on less dualistic moral conceptions such as concern, care, compassion, and gratitude. There are three warrants why rational conception of rights are ethnocentric and fail to adequately account for the views of others. Plumwood 2. Rights are quite important as parts of the procedure of the public sphere. The masculine emphasis promising a more approach for ethics would be to remove rights from the center of the moral stage and put more attention to some of the less dualistic moral concepts of respect, sympathy, care, concern, compassion, gratitude, and friendship. And because of the dualistic control, these have been treated as peripheral. First, rationalism in the public sphere influence not only the concept of what morality is, but of what's essential to it. And second, concepts such as respect, care, concern, or representative analysis along the dualistic reason and emotional dichotomy. Rationalists inspire ethical concepts are and cannot adequately account for the views of indigenous people. These alternative concepts need to apply for to the views of such people whose ethic of care and responsibility. And the problem with our current dualisms are they operate on an assumption that one side is superior to the opposition of the other side. Thus, the privilege are seen as justified in using the subordinate as a means to the end. So we must articulate or adopt a feminist ethic which criticizes ethnocentrism and articulates the values of care. Warren. A feminist ethic involves a commitment to critique the male bias ethic wherever it occurs and develops the ethics which are not male bias. This involves an articulation of values, e.g. values of care, kinship, etc. Often lost or underplayed in mainstream ethics. And first, nothing can become part of my feminist ethic that can be part of the club that promotes sexism, racism, concept isms of social domination. Second, a feminist ethic is contextualistic ethic, one which sees the ethical discourse of preferring emerging from the voice of people located in historical circumstances. Third, since the feminist ethic rejects its assumption there's one voice in terms of which ethical values can be assessed. Fourth, the feminist ethic reconceives ethical theory as a theory in which possible change over time. Fifth, because feminist ethic is contextualist and inclusiveness through those claims are morally epistemologically favored less bias which are more inclusive than felt experiences and perspective of oppressed persons. And inclusiveness requires and ensures the diverse voice of women and suppressed people will be given legitimacy. Eight, a feminist ethic also involves a reconception of what it is to be human and what it means for humans to engage in ethical decision making. And ecofeminists quintessentially are anti-naturalists, and anti-naturalism consists in the rejection of one way of thinking or acting towards non-human nature that reflects a logical attitude of domination. Ecofeminism is inclusivist that emerges from the voice of women who experience the harmful domination of nature, and the way the domination is tied to their domination as women. It emerges from listening to voices of indigenous people such as Native Americans who have been dislocated from their land. Thus, the standard is rejecting the logic of domination by being compassionate towards people. Lowy defines compassion. Well, why do we concern ourselves about ethics in the first place? I see human beings as born with two essential capacities. The one capacity for empathy, the other sense of self-regard. The latter eventually to drive for self-preservation. Both these traits balance one another. Schopenhauer calls the sense of compassion that is the driving spring of ethics that motivates us to worry about the ethical problems to start with. It is the sense of compassion that leads us to the negotiation table, which would affect, care little how our actions affect others, and merely worry about how they affect us. Now, prefer for a few reasons. A, my ethic precludes all other ethical frameworks because the reason we care about ethics in the first place is because of our capacity for compassion. B, nothing can be part of my ethic that promotes isms of social domination. My ethic is critiques the notion of social domination and rejects that logic. C, my ethic is contextual since it emerges from the voice of people of various historical backgrounds, and we reject the assumption of ethics that is taken to one voice. And D, my inclusiveness is epistemologically favored, which means the legitimacy is given to the voice of the oppressed versus underplaying the struggle. E, I propose a value system which is underplayed on traditional conception of ethics that allows us to conceptualize what it means to be human and further understand the other. This emerges from listening to those who have been experienced through harmful domination, i.e. Native Americans, and reject ethical theories that are rooted in rationalist philosophy because their conceptual culture has been rooted in exploitation and harm. Contention 1 is where rationalism and traditional Western ethics has left us. The desire for organs and body parts are going into the city's multi-billion-dollar business. Many parts of the world corporation consume human rights by regulating the sale of organs from disadvantaged groups without their consent, and as a result, the black market continues to grow by devaluing human rights in the name of CAP. Hughes 02. CAP has incited new tastes and desires for the organ tissue and genetic material. They're now unregulated multi-billion-dollar tissues and body parts obtained by many parts of the world. In South African experimental research units ships human heart valves without consent from the categories of black. Success coordinator shipping the bulk in the United States and other countries, enabling cells to reap enormous profits when handling charges reported as legitimate claims to sale of human organs and tissues results in certain disadvantaged populations and individuals even populated nations being reduced to the role of the supplier of these bodies. Second, new class of entrepreneurial organ brokers taking advantage of the organ scarcity plans to continue to make a mockery of international codes of ethics. These corporations play God and pick and choose who can live and die. Hughes 2. The discourse on scarcity conceals the actual existence of excess wasted organs that end up at the hospital dumpsters on a daily basis. The competitiveness of some hospital workers and medical professionals also contribute to the production of organ wastes. The transplant coordinators in public hospitals and many developing countries are often told to dispose of usable organs rather than allow the competition to get their hands on them. This is a new kind of organ trade that has emerged. They short-circuit national waiting lists and make a mockery of national and international codes of ethics prohibiting the sale of organs. Contention 2 is a shift in values. Our communities ought to cultivate the virtue of generosity, i.e. how we donate, and the method of donation we choose reflects how we understand our obligation to one another. As such, I advocate an opt-out system of presumed consent, giving families the ability to opt out. This is most consistent with rejecting the logic of domination by being compassionate towards people. Lowy 2. Ramsey long ago argued against presumed consent by claiming that such a presumption would stifle generosity by depriving people of the opportunity to act generously by donating their organs, but I would suggest that this is untrue. The opposite is the case of society, which decides that most people would wish to continue is far more generous society than one which presumes that most people would not wish to do so. In our society, there are furthermore myriad of other and more common ways of expressing one's generosity than by donating organs, and the cognitive instruments of donation of society reflects the way the society understands obligations of the members and to one another. In society with strong ethos of mutual help and with strong solidarity, helping another needs become a matter of course. Such societies are apt to choose presumed consent, and with the urge to help one another is less strong or virtually absent. Refusal is more apt to be presumed. Okay. Whoops. Okay.
So how do you solve for contention 1?
Okay, so the argument is not that I solve for contention 1. Contention 1 merely sets up, this is where rationalism and traditional Western
Okay, what is
ethics
rationalism and traditional Western ethics?
So,
is that just like Kantianism and utilitarianism?
No, like anything...
Wait, but that's what your author said, right?
Can I answer your question?
Well, I'm just asking, isn't that what your author said? At least tag about what specifically to Kantianism.
Those are examples of rationalistic thought, right?
Okay,
the argument is that current Western ethics, anything, any sort of ethical theory, util, contractarianism,
okay, cool. So
deontology.
Okay, so how does what's the impact of contention 1? Does it do anything for you?
Yes, it sets up that these traditional Western ethics is fucked up and that we need to be able to alleviate these Western ethics by adopting a new view of...
so how do you alleviate the effects of the illegal market?
Because as communities, we cultivate a virtue of generosity in terms of how we donate. Right?
Okay, have you read the article, the Hughes article it's from? Because I'm pretty sure I read it in part of my NC and it negates. It's the article, the second Hughes part.
That doesn't matter. These are cars that are currently... This is an argument that is currently going on in the status quo.
But the
author may conclude negative, but these are examples of the problem with Western ethics and why the status quo is bad.
Okay, so that just shows why the status quo is bad. What status quo? There's opt-in, opt-out. There's like different systems in different countries. Where are you talking about?
It's a very simple argument.
What status quo are you talking about?
Contention 1 simply criticizes our current notions of what Western ethics is.
Okay, so what is offense? What is offense for you in the round?
Contention 2.
Okay, so why is contention 2 offense?
Because this is how I look. This illustrates the shift in the values. I'm advocating for an opt-out system where we give people the ability to opt out. That's most consistent with rejecting the logic of domination.
Does that rely on getting more organs?
Because we're compassionate towards more people.
Does that rely on an increase in organ supply?
The argument is not that increased organ supply decrease organ supply. It's that we create a community where people are going to generate.
But if your argument is that we have to be more compassionate, in order to be compassionate, we have to be giving more organs, it seems, so that we're able to help people. If you actually decrease that, wouldn't that, if like
I don't decrease that. I'm advocating for a community where generosity is main focus.
But you don't have any evidence that shows that, do you?
This is like
so do you just
contingent on the framework, right?
That it happens?
The argument is that we reject the logic of domination. The only way we reject the logic of domination is by cultivating virtues of generosity in terms of how we donate.
Okay, how does presumed consent foster that?
Okay, so that's the Lowy 2 evidence. So Lowy specifically says that the opposite is untrue. A society which decides that most people will wish to contribute is far more a generous society than one which presumes that most people would not wish to do so. In our society,
what about mandated choice?
What about mandated choice? That doesn't solve under the eco-feminist framework. I mean, you can make arguments about how that does. I'll just respond to it.
I'm just asking how Lowy accounts for mandated choice. Because it just says, like, why does it
I don't know what mandated choice says.
Okay,
tell me about it.
Wait, actually, before we start, is there any way, because you didn't read the full text, like you didn't read all the stuff that's underlined versus...
I'll start in front, just
okay.
I didn't read this. This is the only paragraph I did.
Wait.
No, I did read that. Yeah.
Actually,
if you want the case, that's a different question than let's take some time to reformat and the like. So you want the case?
Okay.
There we go. Now we'll start that.
Okay.
I read everything else.
slide A.
.54 seconds remaining. The order is going to be NT counterplan AC.
How long is the NC?
Uh,
Can I flow both on one sheet of paper?
I put it on. I flow on like one. The NC on the front, the counterplan on the back.
Okay, I'm sorry. Repeat the order again.
NC, then a counterplan, and then an AC, and then the AC, not and an AC. Sorry.
Yeah. Trickery though. That'd be trickery.
Write it down. Is everyone ready? I negate. I value morality since audits bind its use activity or moral obligation by dictionary.com. Morality cannot be separated from the context that individuals come from, the social conditions that influence moral belief. This means that any valid system morality needs to take into account the social conditions of the individual. Judith Butler. Errors to found the I becomes under a detached from a social historical condition which constitute the conditions that own emerge. There is no morality without an I. What's the I consist what terms of the account of self? When the I seeks to account of self, recover self, but applying themselves is already implicated in a social temporality that sees its own capacity for nations. Thus we must critically reflect upon the social and political conditions that frame the subject, understanding of ethics prior to questions of particular normative rules, since these conditions undermine the universality of such claims as they are dependent upon a particular perspective. This takes us the 8th experience theory. Standards ground justification are not dependent on the social particular person, so derive invalid rules even if their reasoning is true. Understanding the particularities of individuals' perspectives requires acknowledging how political powers like the state have the capacity to create structures of truth under which people frame their understanding of right and wrong. Sean Ryder writes, structure creates truth, and truth isn't outside of power. Truth is a thing of the world. Each study creates a regime of truth according to belief, values, and morals. Co-identifies the creation of truth in contemporary Western society to control the distribution of truth by political and economic apparatus. The ultimate truth is the construct of political force that command majority power within society, where there's no truly universal truth. The problem with this, so this is going to be taking out the 8th paper because his 8th paper doesn't account for the biasing beliefs that individuals can have. So I'm saying we have to look at how the state or society can influence our beliefs. So this means that any assumption how the government or society can or can't act rests upon these false assumptions of how they ought to act in the first place, because truth is entangled with the regime of truth created by conscious need to allow people to speak out against the tyrannical the government force. We don't let people speak out against the specific truth that is enforced by them. The country says to totalize their citizens into an oppressive conception of truth. This means that we need to allow the marginalized group to speak out against about the government, about the oppression of the government, and to include these groups in our discussion. For example, I was raised in Nazi Germany. I probably believe that Jews are inferior. My argument is due to the government's regime of truth. We don't ensure conditions to challenge the oppressive norms that we'd allow for the government to find our beliefs. Additionally, further the age framework, because this is actually specific to obligations of what the state should be doing about the individual as it is, which is just an individual ethics, talking about ethics care. Therefore, these standards are respecting the right to dissent against political structures. Now, my thesis and sole contention that presumed consent places the burden of organization on those who value bodily integrity and those who are currently excluded from the system. This is from the same article that the Shepard Hughes arguments are from, and this is this is what she ends up concluding. The concept of the divisible body of organization is enforcing the upper class values on the poor. Shepard Hughes explains. Clarity is needed about whose value of the body are being represented. The value of bodily integrity and dignity are more widespread in the poorer parts of the world. Bodily integrity lies behind the first people's demand for reparation and the reburial of people remains. They lie behind demands for the rescue of the poor, for dignified rebirth, and for dignified death and reburial, and they lie behind roots for organ theft and popular resistance to presumed consent laws. Due to socioeconomic disparities in the medical system, the burdens of organization are disproportionately on the shoulders of minorities. The system of presumed consent asks groups that are excluded from the medical system be the ones that bear the cost. Shepard Hughes 2. There's little conscience of the vulnerability of some social class and ethnic groups who are the designated donor population. The U.S. group is poor and they are overrepresented in ICU due to their disproportionate exposure to urban violence, the high rate of suicide in particular ethnic communities, and societal and medical needs. Those lacking public insurance, the greatest number of those whose families members are asked to donate their organs of loved ones. That a great many of these families refuse because they are being asked to give organs to support a system that excludes them and within which they would have a lower probability of receiving an organ should the need arise. Widespread refusal to donate among the poor, Latino, and African Americans. The political act of considered resistance. Human rights workers complain of gross violations of Palestinian bodies by Israeli Catholics relying on presumed consent. These surges to illegally harvest their organs that they believe they are helping to save lives, which is more important than trying to procure the consent of families. Some bodies, however, were exempt. The bodies of Israeli soldiers. Combined with the fact that many of the least well-off will be unaware of state policy and may not have the time to opt out, it's unfair to make them donate their organs when the one thing they want is to be able to control how the remains are treated. This also turns your case into you are structurally treating these minorities when you're supposed to be including everyone, trying to be compassionate. And I also outweigh because my arguments include a wider diversity of groups, and you don't even specify in your argument. You have arguments with standards that say why you're including groups. However, your argument, the Lowy evidence doesn't even talk about how you're specifically your argument, your Lowy evidence isn't very specific to that. Next off is the counterplan text. Is the counterplan text that a just society will adopt a system of mandated choice with respect to organization. Drape it all clarifies and is solvency advocate. Mandated choice requires competence to decide whether they wish to donate their organ. The individuals can also let their relatives have the final say. However, the relatives cannot veto a decision. Questions about organ donation can form part of a tax return, driver's license form, state benefit claim, and so forth. The move to mandated choice would be accompanied by public education so people are sufficiently informed. Finally, choices would also be brought with competition. One and mutual exclusivity. I mandate that you choose. The state doesn't presume as to. It competes to net benefit first. Net benefit is the organ shortage. Surveys prove that A, the majority of Americans believe that we should adopt a system of mandated choice, and B, that if mandated choice were implemented, at least 63% of people would donate compared to the current 38% natural rate. Spittle explains. 30% of respondents had decided to donate, but 58% were undecided. Only 38% made their wish to donate to a family member. 82% believe this is the best way to obtain consent is for each adult to decide for themselves rather than family under mandated choice. 63% were donate, 24% would not, and 13% were unsure. Therefore, the difficult questions of consent is often left to the family. If mandated choice becomes law, it appears that most adults would sign up to donate, thereby increasing donors. And the second, additionally. Organization rates in Illinois prove that mandated choice is better than an opt-in system. Thaler explains. Mandated choice in Illinois hasn't ruffled many feathers. The state now has a 60% donor sign-up rate that's much higher than the national average, 38%. Mandated choice has another advantage that could be legal conflicts over family pressure in Illinois. Ones which to be a donor are legally binding. Thus, mandated choice would achieve a higher rate of donations than presumed consent. This specifically turns back his argument because his argument relies on an increase in organ supply. Because if you don't have an increase in organ supply, then you can't actually have compassion. You can't actually have compassion because the compassion is for other people. So just because you mandate, then just because you presume consent, that doesn't have any impact. He needs to have studies to show how it's going to be increasing the donor rates. If I'm the only one who's going to be able to do that at the end of the round, that's going to be a reason to vote for me. Now let's actually start on the NC contention level offense. So first off, on contention 1, he conceded it isn't even offense in cross-examination. So it's not going to be, he conceded it isn't offense in cross-examination. Don't let him get up and send new reasons why it is, or make new reasons why it is. Then on the Hughes argument, on the Hughes evidence, the first, also the Hughes evidence is from an article that concludes that mandated choice is bad. Those are the arguments that I'm cutting from. So you probably shouldn't be reading it. But then on the contention 2, which is the Lowy evidence, which says the only piece of offense, 1, you can turn it because this justifies prescription, doesn't justify an opt-out system, because mandated presumed consent at that point wouldn't be considered compassionate because you're allowing for people to opt out, which would be going against your standard, because that wouldn't be a compassion act to turn a mandated choice allows it better because it'll actually forces individuals to choose, which means that they have to choose to be compassionate or choose not to be compassionate as opposed to his, which just makes the presumption. 3, you can turn it because presumed consent is biased against women, how they view themselves in the body. Nelson explains. Organs are part of bodies. Bodies are gendered. Women's experience with their bodies tend to be differ systematically. Policy of objectivity would be more burdensome for many women. Strong tendency in many human cultures to figure a woman's body largely as it means heterosexual male gratification. As a consequence of these tendencies, the integrity of the physical boundaries of women's bodies routinely de-emphasized because of opt-out policies to reduce these significance of the body's boundaries, reinforce existing tendencies. Regardless, boundaries is less important for the living. Consequently, an opt-out policy might be reasonably seen as offensive to women. Women tend to identify with their bodies to understand the living body is self-supposed. An opt-out system is put into place. Some women might then experience the social expectation that one's organs to be available for others. Someone experiences her body. If someone experiences her body as herself, having her organs, having her living organs implanted to another person may be more like an act of intimacy than an easy escape. Additionally, adopting presumed consent doesn't solve because it doesn't prove that people are actually going to be compassionate. It doesn't prove that people are going to be compassionate. So you don't have any offense that specifically understands compassion. One, I've already argued why this isn't even specific. This isn't specific to how government's supposed to be acting, so it's not going to be applicable in the resolution. But also, I think compassion to solve. We have to account for multiple different groups. It's going to be the reason the MC framework comes first because compassion can't solve and talk about inclusion. And I like the warrant under the standard of pretty close.
Let's talk about the Butler arguments in the framework. You say specifically that those take out the AC framework, right?
So the argument, well, yeah.
How does it do that? How does Butler take out the AC framework?
The argument specifically, I made it after Ryder. So there's one. So the argument was that you don't specifically look at how the state shapes individuals' beliefs.
How do I not do that? I'm critiquing the notion of what the state should do.
I don't. I mean, you can make those arguments now. I'll just respond to them in the next speech.
Okay.
Okay.
But okay, so you spend this entire time reading all of this like framework reasons for how this functions on a higher level than the app, this takes it out. I want to know, how do you, through your advocacy, reject the logic of domination?
Okay, so that seems to be the contention level offense which Shepard indicates, is that when we have certain groups who are the designated donor populations and we adopt a system of presumed consent, which is asking them to shoulder the burden of it.
There were 7 reasons why we prefer my standard for rejecting logic of domination. How do you meet those reasons?
What?
How do you meet each of those justifications for rejecting...
Which of the 7 justifications?
Underneath the standard. So, let me pull it up.
Well, 1, you said those are warrants for the standard, and 2...
no, these are reasons to prefer.
Yeah,
right?
so they're reasons, so that's a warrant for your standards. Additionally, they don't necessarily exclude mine. They're just arguments that you include people, that you're not exclusive. However, my arguments indicate that you are exclusive in how you're treating it, because you're asking certain groups who are already minorities and who are already excluded from the medical system to be the ones who support it. So that's
fine. Let's go to mandated choice. So you make an argument about how the families or something, like families should have the final say.
No.
Then wait, go through the first card in the mandated choice.
The Draper evidence?
Yeah.
Okay, so the Draper evidence is solvency advocate. What it says is that you have choices. You can either agree to donate your organs, you can say, I don't want to donate my organs, or you can leave the decision for your family members. However, if you make a decision to donate or not to donate, the decision of an individual cannot be overruled by their family member.
Okay.
So the argument is that helps to better protect, the argument would just be that the reason for this is that helps better protect their autonomy or something like that, because then their decisions are actually being respected after death, as opposed to a system where it's just like the family.
There's 3 reasons, right? A is the family. The second reason why that system better does it is because...
Wait, no, those aren't the reasons. That's just a solvency advocate. That's not the net beneficial arguments.
Okay, then let's go through the net benefits.
Okay, so there's only one, which is just that it helps to increase the organ supply. There are 2 cards under there. They are... So it's spittle evidence, which indicates it's a spittle and the Thaler evidence. Do you want to see it, or do you want to explain it, or what?
Actually, that's fine.
Okay.
Starting now. What was the term you read about, like, opt-out systems, like, hurt women or something?
Okay, here, you want to see it?
Yeah. Or can you just, like, explain it to me?
Okay, so the argument is that specifically how women view themselves and their body, especially with the current system of society and how they are viewed by society, it means that they can fear that organ donation could be, or organ procurement could become something similar, where they can be excluded from society and their organs are just viewed as a means to someone else's end.
Oh, okay. $52 seconds. Alright. We're just going to be AC starting at Plumwood and Warren at the top of the framework, and then I'll go to the framework of his NC, and then counterpoint.
Wait. Sorry, to say it again.
Yeah, so I'll just signpost, but first I'll be starting at Plumwood and Warren in the AC.
And then what else afterwards?
Then I'll be going to the NC framework and then counterpoint. Yeah. Ready? Big mistake was Cole conceding. Plumwood and Warren, this evidence is contextual because it critiques the system that he's using to advocate for these social changes, so extend them. Most of the problem lies in rational style. Plumwood explains that this approach is sufficient because it works with the Kantian or utilitarian framework or any other ethical system reason, ignores our abilities and desires of inclination, perpetuates the logic of domination. Our current conception of rights are masculine, purporting a sense of prestige over the public sphere. Ethics are rights to be centered on less dualistic moral concepts such as concern, care, compassion, or gratitude. But the problem with our current dualisms are they operate on an assumption that one side is superior in opposition to the other side. Thus, the privilege are seen as justified in using the subordinate as a means to an end. So extend the standard and allowing which says that we should reject the logic of domination by being compassionate and extend the reason to prefer. He's not being comparative with how he meets each of these reasons. I asked him in cross-examination, how does his advocacy of mandated choice specifically reject the logic of domination? He wasn't able to give me a concrete answer. Let's go through those reasons. A, my ethic is always going to preclude all his ethical framework because the reason we care about ethics in the first place is because of our capacity for compassion. B, nothing can be part of my ethic that promotes the isms of social domination, i.e., my ethic critiques the notion of social domination, rejects the logic, so that also functions as an inadvertent response to the turn about how organ donation, about how it hurts women's body because we listen to their narrative and if they don't want to do organ donation, then they have a choice to opt out. And C, my ethic is contextual such emerges from voice of people of various historical backgrounds, which is in the second reason how that turn goes away. We reject the assumption of ethics that takes into account one voice, and my inclusiveness is epistemologically favored, which means the legitimacy is given to the voice of the oppressed versus underplaying the struggle. I propose a value system which underplays the traditional conception of ethics as contextual, what it means to be human, and further understand the other. And you should reject rationalist ethical theories that are rooted in rational philosophy like Drew's because their conception and culture has been rooted in exploitation and harm. Go to contention 1. This is where rationalism and traditional Western ethics have screwed up. He says Hughes concludes negative, but my argument is using Hughes to illustrate why his current system is bad and he perpetuates these dualisms that I am critiquing. Then go to contention 2, which is the solution. I advocate shifting our values. Community should cultivate a value of generosity with how we donate because we understand our obligation to one another. That's allowing to. I advocate an opt-out system of presumed content, giving families the ability to opt out. Is most consumers rejecting the logic of domination by being compassionate towards people because I lead individuals to make the choice for themselves. This is also how I meet my own reasons for the standard. This resist governmental control and the framework already answers the turn because we listen to narratives. So part of the counter plan, I can still do mandated choice, but it'll be even better because we give them the choice to opt out. And go to his framework. Overview to the NC. The NC responds to the government is the quo, but that's not the ethic I speak of. One, standing up to the government assumes there's a dualism between the people and the government, but in my world there's compassion between these groups where they work closely and start from a narrative perspective. The citizens' dualisms are broken down. NC responds to the government is quo, but, scratch that. Then, this argument doesn't deal with the root cause of the issue. Sure, governments are oppressive, but this is because how they're constructing their value systems. Deconstruction the AC gets at the source of why these isms exist, and i.e. the implication of the isms within themselves, and the thinking perpetuates these dualisms, and also actions are exclusionary. Justice then is an issue of finding the less exclusionary thing, i.e. the AC, as long as we start with narratives of people and they have the option to opt out. Hagelin. Every definition, every measure of violence is a violent itself since based on decisions that are haunted by the world that they excuse the criteria for what counts as violence are therefore always open to challenge. Indeed, there would be no chance to pursue political critique and transfer the law defines the violence that were not subject to possible alteration or formally one unrecognized as violence in the judicial sense the abuse and killings of animals, but subordinated class, race, and gender measurements of justice violence are synonymous because all principles of justice rely on extermination, ignoring other conception of violence. And I argue that PC is the best model because it endorses one of compassion care. This means that I also listen to the narratives and acknowledge contextual ethics. This means means that the action of government might include, and my conception of just society is one which functions under fear and compassion. So even if we both function under a framework of ecofeminism, that would be something we prefer to presume consent over alternatives like his, because a society of care and compassion would presume generosity, and first, they assume that his system of mandated choice preserves autonomy, but this is untrue because in my world I endorse an opt-out system where individuals are free to not donate organs if they wish, and also this makes the argument that MC is not coercive, but M to Merriam-Webster defines mandate as an authoritarian command. This means that their system compels individuals to donate against their will. Opt-out functions as a disadd to the CP's net benefits, and they also make arguments that opt-out is harder for people who not want to donate, but this is fallacious. We err on the side of presuming consent would be generous, caring, or compassion, would be interested in the community, not presuming presuppose that other groups are assholes and don't care, so we presume this, but they can still opt out. And additionally, they say that my ethic harms marginalized groups with A, there's no warrant to show how that's true, and B, my ethic encompasses narratives of those who've been systematically oppressed and allows a forum for us to hear their voices and shift our value system. And in the Netherlands, mandated choice only got 41% response. Most people don't care or can't decide. That takes out the CP.
54 seconds.
Okay. What was the second argument? What was the argument you made before you said mandate defines to authoritative?
That you assume that your MC preserved autonomy, but this is untrue because in my world I endorse an opt-out system where individuals are free to not donate organs if they wish.
Okay. The order is going to be starting on the AC, top down, and then NC right counterplan. I'll be clear.
Cool.
Okay, is everyone ready?
Yep.
The biggest problem with rounding, he's conceding way too many arguments at the contention level debate. It doesn't matter which framework you're going to evaluate the round under, but I'm going to be winning under both. He tried, so now let's start at the top of the AC framework. He tried to extend the Plum whatever to talk about how I'm using rational thought. However, he never makes an argument as to how I link into this rational thought. He just says I link to Western rational thought, but he never explains that the arguments in the AC are very specific to Kant and utilitarianism and any other ethical theory. It's unclear why Foucault specifically links, or like Foucault or Sean Ryder or Butler actually link into this conception of he doesn't do that work for him. If he doesn't do that work, you don't do it for him. So I don't actually link to your argument. Additionally, you're conceding two responses to the standard. One is the argument that I'm actually specific to government. You're not specific to government because yours is an ethical theory about what individuals do, and I said too you can't account for all groups of compassion because I said you can't account for all the different groups of compassion because compassion doesn't mean like I'm sure individuals have been compassionate for a long time, but that means like we've still excluded certain groups all throughout history. So you can actually solve. So you conceded independent responses that take out your framework. Additionally, he tries to extend the additional reasons below these standards to take it out, but however, my argument specifically responds to his entire conception of a standard. He also says that he makes an argument here that this takes out the Nelson term because he listens to their narratives. However, this is blatantly false. If you actually listen to the narrative, the card is that you don't want to have presumed consent because I'll get to that later. But he's making random cross applications on the argument here. These are warrants for a standard. They aren't arguments to take it out. They aren't arguments to take out contention level offense. And I did give him a clear answer. He's saying he's including people. He says the standard is include people. I'm showing. My offense shows how he excludes people. That means very clearly, if you think he's winning the framework debate, I still win under it. He tried to extend contention one that shows how my case is bad. However, no, he's completely wrong. He conceded it isn't offense. The article isn't even right. It isn't even on the right side of the resolution because Hughes says that we shouldn't use presumed consent. Those are the two cards that are in the NC case are from the same article. So at this point, he can't be extending this as offense for him. If anything, it's offense for me because it's proving why. Because these arguments are just reasons. Shepard Hughes argues that we shouldn't use presumed consent. So, because that doesn't help minorities. He's cutting arguments from that article. Shouldn't be doing that. It's also not offense. Then, the biggest problem with Lowy, he's just extending this through ink. There are like literally 5 responses. He's only answering one of them, which is the Nelson analysis. 1, extending number 1 term, which I said opting out means that you're not being compassionate or presuming there's an opt-out system. It just justifies his argument would justify a prescription system, but that's not what he's advocating for. So an opt-out system isn't actually consistent with this because by allowing individuals to choose to opt out, that means you're allowing for individuals to not be compassionate. It means he doesn't need a standard. No new response because he didn't answer from last speech. And then extending number 2 argument, which I said mandated choice is specifically better because it allows for individuals to have a choice which mandate that they actually have they determine compassion, which means that they have to have they have to choose to be compassionate or choose to not be compassionate, which is better than just the state having to presume, since that means the state's doing something as opposed to the individual doing something. Then you can explicitly extend the Nelson evidence specifically how women view organs as part of their body and how they don't specifically want to be donating. And the argument, you can call for it after on the argument that if we have a presumption of consent, that the idea that it's presumed is the very bad argument. So he says that opt-out solves. However, no, the Nelson argument is very specific. It's the very fact there's this idea that they consent to it. There's this idea that women are supposed to be able to donate organs, which is a bad thing. So just the fact that they can opt out is not enough to solve. He should have read the evidence. Additionally, you can send the number 4 argument that adopting presumed consent doesn't solve because that doesn't show that people are compassionate. That just means that it's just an argument to increase organ supply. Then let's go to the counter plan. So the problem is, he makes a really quick perm, but I didn't even catch what the exact text was. He just says that we can opt out too. However, that's not going to be able to solve. We can't do opt out and mandated choice, because mandated choice, you can send the Draper evidence. It's very specific. We have multiple redundant ways to control for the fact that individuals are required to sign up for this, or they can't complete driver's license form or tax registration form. So that's going to be solving the problem. Additionally, even if you think he thought it's permanent, it's going to be the number of people who don't qualify or don't sign up is going to be so low that there's no net benefit to his perm. So he's also dropping it. So then the problem is he makes a second argument which says, I don't support autonomy. However, I'm saying, one, the fact that you support, you force minorities to go through all this trouble to fill forms out is bad. You should just be, if you actually listen to their narrative, then you wouldn't adopt a system of presumed consent. 2, there's no autonomy net benefit, so it doesn't answer. He also has a definition of mandate. However, that's not, a mandated choice is a term of art, so it doesn't apply. Then he also makes 2 quick arguments as to how I don't harm minorities, because he says, 1, there's no warrant, but we'll get to that on the negative case, and he says that I don't respect their narrative, or that he listens to their narrative. However, he obviously doesn't. He didn't even respond to the specific arguments. So that means that you can extend the, but those are just he made these arguments on the counterplan, but they were response to stuff on the NC. So you can extend the spittle evidence, which completely concede, which talks about how I helped you increase the organ supply. Then you can extend the argument below there, which this turns the AC contention, because that relies out upon the idea that we have an increase in organ supply. So at that point, he's conceding this, that we, in order to be compassionate, the idea that we have compassion has this idea that we're able to translate organs and give them to other people so that they can live. If I'm the only one who's able to show that I increase the number of people who have organs, that's going to be a reason I win. He didn't answer this in the last speech. So now on the NC case, I won't go for framework. So I'm still saying I can link into his, because I have conceded turns. He's completely conceded them. Just extending the arguments below the standard isn't sufficient, because I'm showing how he excludes people. I very clearly met that in cross-examination. So then you can additionally extend the second piece of Shepard-Hughes evidence, which the argument shows how the second piece of Shepard-Hughes evidence says the minorities are being forced to bear the burden because they are the ones who are currently being excluded from the medical system. However, adopting a system of presumed consent asks them to be the ones who support the medical system. Even if you can make the argument that they can opt out, the problem is that they will not all the time be informed. They may not necessarily be informed about the fact that they're presumed consent, and they may not know about it. So asking them to shoulder the burden is bad. If they're the ones who are being excluded, then they shouldn't be asked to just opt out, because that takes time and they may not know about it. So here's how the round break. Additionally, there's weighing below the standard. There is specifically weighing below that. Let me just extend that. So the argument says I outweigh because my arguments include a wide diversity of groups. You don't even specifically talk about any specific minority groups. So here's how the round breaks down. I link back into a standard. He's conceded 5 different turns on the Lowy evidence, and then the stuff on the NC, which also turns, and the counterplan.
52 seconds remaining. Order is going to be AC framework, starting at Plumwood and Moore, and then I'll signpost from there. It'll be top down of the EC, and then we'll go to the framework. Is everyone good? Sorry, he doesn't win the framework debate. Big mistake was cold conceding Plano and Ward. The evidence is contextual because it critiques the system he's using to advocate for these social changes. Remember, much of the problem lies in the rational thought, which is what he himself is advocating for, because Plano explains that this approach is sufficient because it works with either a Kantian or utilitarian frameworks, and these are just examples of rationalism in any current theory, i.e. Rationalism encompasses anything from Descartes to Kant, so reason ignores our abilities, desires, and inclination to perpetuate the logic of domination. Our current conception of rights are masculine, purporting a sense of prestige, public sphere, ethics, and rights need to be centered on less dualistic conceptions, and he perpetuates these dualisms. His system of mandated choice is perpetuating the dualisms that I try to solve for. So, extend the standard and prefer Lowy for several reasons. A, he's not being comparative because how he meets these reasons, the thus the argument about how his framework takes out the AC doesn't matter because he's not showing you comparatively how he solves for the logic of domination. You can't use my framework to say that he's going to be able to speak out and include oppressed voices. So A, remember my ethic precludes his because the reason we care about ethics in the first place is because of our capacity for compassion. That means that compassion is always going to be prerequisite. And second, nothing can be part of my ethic that promotes isms and social domination. So all his arguments about how I'm being dominating doesn't apply under my ethic. And C, my ethic is potential with me because it emerges from the voice of various historical backgrounds. We reject the assumption that ethics take into account one particular voice and epistemologically favor, which means that legitimacy is given to voices of the oppressed. We don't just cherry pick which voice we're going to listen to. And remember, the only way we do this is by proposing the value system, which is underplayed in our traditional conception of ethics, i.e. what Drew is advocating for. This allows us to conceptualize what it means to be human and further understand the other. Then so therefore, reject ethical theories that are rooted in rational philosophy because their conception and culture has been rooted in exploitation and harm. Then go to contention 1. This is clearly an example where rationalism and traditional ethics have screwed up. He says Hughes concludes negative, but I'm using this argument to illustrate why his current conception of ethics is flawed, not justifying this. Then, contention 2, the solution I advocate a shift in our values community should cultivate a value of generosity. Generosity is the only way that we can solve for the issues and the oppression. I advocate an opt-out system and presume consent, giving the family the ability to opt-out. This most consistent rejecting the logic of domination. As a result, I leave individuals to make the choice for themselves, which resist governmental control. The framework already answers to that women's turn. Remember, because we listen to their narratives, if they don't want to be part of the opt-out system, they have the system they can opt out of not giving organs. We just want them to be under the system of generosity, make them feel included in the community. Then go to the framework. He says that he concedes the framework, but that doesn't matter. His arguments don't deal with the root cause of the issue. Sure, governments are oppressive because of how they construct their value system, deconstructs of the AC as the power source of why create isms, i.e. the implication of the isms within them, the kind of thinking perpetuates these dualisms that he's advocating for. That's the first dropped argument. Second, vote off the Hagelin argument that indicates that all actions are exclusionary. Justice that is an issue of finding the less exclusionary thing, i.e. the AC. As long as we start with narratives of people, which is what the AC specifically does, they can have the option to opt out later. And remember, he makes the argument that mandated choice is a term of art, but that was a new argument. He never mentioned that it was a term of art in the previous speech, so we'll go by presuming the MW definition of mandated choice was an authoritative command. That means that his system is always going to compel individuals to donate against their will. Opt-out functions as a dissent to the CP's net benefit, which is only that people want this, but I'm being more inclusive of what people want because we take into account every single voices. We don't cherry pick who we're going to listen to and who doesn't matter.
Good round.
Good round.